It wasn't the silence that broke her. It was the feeling of being invisible in a home that echoed with wealth but not warmth. For 3 years, Emily Anderson walked through the halls of a mansion, heard her own footsteps more often than her husband's voice, and endured breakfasts that tasted of loneliness more than food. People envy the rich without realizing that luxury without affection is just an expensive form of solitude. Emily had once dreamed of love, like everyone else, of flowers, laughter, shared secrets under the covers. But her life took a different turn the day her family sat her down and asked her to save them. Her father's company was crumbling under financial pressure, creditors knocking suppliers fleeing. The Anderson family, powerful, precise, ruthless, offered a solution, a merger sealed with marriage. Emily wasn't asked to fall in love. She was asked to sign her name, and so she did. William Anderson, heir to the Anderson Empire, didn't want love either. He wanted convenience, a wife in name, stability for investors, no mess, no expectations, no emotions. He didn't yell, didn't belittle, didn't even cheat. He simply ignored. In the 3 years they were married, he barely addressed her. They spoke maybe 50 words, no more. It was as if she existed in a different dimension, one where she was present but unseen. Each morning, Emily would tiptoe downstairs at 6:00 a.m., eat in silence, then vanish before William arrived at 6:15. That 15-minute window was her world. It was where she clung to dignity, to routine, to the only time she felt like she could breathe. And then one day, without warning, it all changed. He said her name, just that, Emily. And it was like hearing music in a place that had always been silent. She froze, turned around. There he was, standing at the base of the staircase, dressed in a pristine black suit, looking every bit the billionaire CEO. But for the first time, he wasn't just a man in a suit. He was someone looking at her. "I need you to attend a corporate gala," he said flatly, as if asking an assistant to type an email. Emily blinked. "I don't understand." "You're my wife," he replied. "I need to appear stable. Investors will be there." She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. 3 years of ghosthood, and now he wanted a prop on his arm. But she didn't laugh. She stood tall and replied with the only weapon she had left, composure. "I'll go," she said, "not because it's a duty, but because I want to see the world you chose over me." Those words didn't just land. They shook something loose inside him. What followed wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow unraveling. At the gala, Emily wore a navy blue dress she had bought years earlier, back when she thought maybe she'd have a real life with someone. She hadn't worn it since. William looked at her and paused, not out of obligation, but because she startled him. Her grace, her quiet confidence, the way she held her head. He didn't remember marrying this woman, because truthfully, he'd never tried to know her at all. Throughout the evening, Emily played the part well. She smiled, she conversed, she impressed guests with her wit and poise. And one man, Richard Thompson, took special notice. An international investor with a sharp mind and a gentler demeanor than most in that world. He shook her hand, kissed it lightly, and listened. Really listened when she spoke. William noticed. It was the first time jealousy cracked through his porcelain demeanor. But jealousy isn't the same as love. It's more primitive, protective, territorial. Still, something had begun. Emily confronted him the next day, not with shouting, but with questions he couldn't answer. "What's my favorite color?" she asked. "What did I study? What do I do all day in this house while you're building your empire?" William had no answers. And in that silence, something even more dangerous than anger stirred regret. He realized he didn't know the woman he married, not because she was unknowable, but because he had never tried. That's the thing about relationships. They don't die from dramatic betrayals. They die from apathy, from neglect, from one person being present while the other is absent, even when they share the same roof. In the days that followed, William began to notice her in ways he never had. Her voice, her opinions, her expressions when she thought no one was watching. He started asking questions, making breakfast, staying home later, and Emily, suspicious and guarded, watched him closely. Was this guilt strategy a delayed sense of duty, or was it something more? One night he saw her getting ready to meet Richard again, this time for dinner, and something inside him snapped. Not rage, but desperation. He followed her. At the restaurant, he didn't confront her publicly. He waited, observed. The candlelight danced off her skin. Her laughter, real, unforced, cut through him. When Richard stepped away, William took his seat and asked, "What are you doing here?" Her answer, "Having dinner with someone who sees me." And that hit harder than any slap, because William had spent 3 years building a life so insulated, so calculated, that he had become numb to the most basic human need, to be seen, to be loved. He started to unravel that night. Words tumbled out. Confessions, jealousy, obsession, the fear that he had lost her to a man who didn't carry his last name, but offered her something far more valuable: attention, respect. Real love isn't loud. It's not always wrapped in grand gestures or movie score moments. Sometimes it's someone finally showing up emotionally, vulnerably, imperfectly. And William tried. He began to rebuild from the ruins he'd made. He cooked breakfast, asked about her day, lingered in rooms just to be near her. And for the first time, Emily saw not a CEO, but a man trying to be better. But the truth has a way of catching up. Have you ever had a moment where pretending led to something unexpectedly real? Please comment below and like this video if you believe the best love stories start with honesty. Subscribe our channel now for more powerful story-based videos every day. One day while organizing files in his office, she found a folder, a contract, detailed, clinical, with clauses outlining everything about their marriage, the merger, the timeline, even children. It wasn't just a business arrangement, it was a transaction. She hadn't just married into wealth, she had been sold. She confronted William, and for once he didn't deny. He admitted he hadn't known the full extent, but that didn't change what it meant. Emily packed her suitcase, and this time she didn't wait to be asked to stay. But just before she left, she dropped a bombshell: she was pregnant. William stood there stunned. And when he reached out to her, not out of control or obligation, but out of love, he whispered the words she had waited years to hear. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I love you." She didn't answer with words right away. The silence hung in the air, heavier than all the unspoken things between them. But when she finally looked up, her eyes shimmered, not just with tears, but with the weight of 3 years' worth of neglect, confusion, and longing. "I waited for you," she said softly. "For 3 years I waited for you to notice me, to ask about my day, to sit with me at dinner. I was right here, and you only saw me when someone else did." Her voice didn't shake. It was calm, certain. That kind of clarity only comes when the pain has settled and turned into something sharper: self-worth. William tried to speak, but she stopped him with a glance. "I need time," she said, "to figure out what's real and what's still performance." And that's when he did something no one expected. He let her go, not because he didn't care, but because he finally understood that love doesn't grasp, it doesn't cage, it doesn't manipulate someone into staying. It offers the door, but never locks it. What William did next shocked everyone, even his own father. He gathered the lawyers. He sat in the boardroom that had once been the control center of his life, and he dismantled the very contract that had started it all. The merger, the clauses, the wealth, it all came with strings. Strings tied to Emily's life, her freedom, her future. I don't care what it costs, he told them. Unwind it. Every last thread, William, his father, warned. We're talking about $15 million, I don't care. Because something inside him had finally shifted. The man who once saw relationships as negotiations was beginning to understand that some things, love, forgiveness, dignity, couldn't be bought. Meanwhile, Emily spent a week away. No calls, no texts. She needed space, needed air. She stayed in a modest hotel, far from marble floors and curated dinner parties, and every night she touched her stomach, feeling the weight of new life growing inside her, trying to decide whether the man who helped create it was capable of change or just good at mimicking it. One morning, William sent a letter, not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter, messy, crossed out, vulnerable. In it, he didn't beg, he didn't plead, he just said, I was never taught how to love, I only knew how to win. But with you, I lost every day. I treated you like a shadow. And if you come back, it won't be perfect, but it will be real. You taught me what love is, and I'm willing to spend the rest of my life learning how to do it right with you. It was the first time he had ever written to her, and it was enough to make her return, not to surrender, but to talk. They met in the house that had once been silent. This time she spoke first. I'm pregnant. His face paled, then broke into something she'd never seen before, genuine emotion. They stood in the kitchen, neither knowing what to do. So he stepped forward, placed a hand over her stomach, and whispered, I want to be here, for both of you. From that moment forward, they began building something new. Not a picture-perfect romance, not a social media fairy tale, but a partnership forged from truth. Emily launched her own consulting agency. William didn't just support her, he bragged about her. At meetings, he'd say, that idea, it came from my wife. At dinners, he'd introduce her not just as Emily Anderson, but as the woman who saved him from himself. And every night they talked, sometimes about their day, sometimes about their fears, but most nights about the baby. They argued over names, painted the nursery together, and slowly they began to trust again. Then one afternoon, everything nearly shattered. Emily was filing documents in William's office when she found another folder, one that had slipped behind the cabinet. She opened it without thinking. It was a set of contracts, not current, old, from the original merger. Inside were the details of her marriage, laid bare the buyout clause, the pregnancy requirement, a timeline for public appearances, even backup plans if she refused. She felt her knees give out as she dropped into the chair. So it had always been a deal. Even when it felt like love, it had started as control. When William got home, she didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She just said, you knew. His face twisted in anguish. I didn't know it went that far, he replied. I knew about the merger, but not about that. And when did you find out? A few months ago. Her voice broke. So when you told me you loved me, when we made love, when we planned this baby, you already knew. Yes, he said, ashamed. But by then I wasn't pretending. She zipped up her suitcase again. Emily, please, I need to figure out if anything was ever real. And for a week she vanished again. William fell apart. He stopped eating, couldn't sleep. His father begged him to move on. His lawyers said they could fix the contracts, but William didn't want legal fixes. He wanted her trust, so he made one final choice. He gave it all back, every cent gained from the merger, every property, stock, and asset tied to the deal. He signed it away and left a note with her mother. She deserves to know she's worth more than anything I ever earned from this. When Emily returned to the house, it was quiet, but there was no marble coldness anymore. The warmth of her presence still lingered. Upstairs, she found William sitting on the edge of the bed, head in hands. And without a word, she pulled 3 pregnancy tests from her bag. "I'm pregnant," she said again, voice soft. He looked up, eyes wide. "You came back." "I came back because I needed to see if you were still the man who let me go when I needed space, or the man who once saw love as leverage." He stood slowly. "I'm the man who let you go, but who will fight for you every day if you'll let me?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she walked into his arms. They kissed not out of passion, but out of understanding. Later that year, they welcomed their son, David William Anderson, a name that carried legacy, but this time, a legacy built on transformation. William changed diapers, took night shifts, sat through Emily's late-night strategy sessions. They built a business together, a family, a love that wasn't loud but was unshakable. One evening, while rocking their baby to sleep, William looked at Emily and said, "I used to think strength was in power, but I learned it from you in grace, in patience, in choosing to love when it would have been easier to leave." She looked back at him with tired, happy eyes and whispered, "And I used to think love was a fantasy, but it's this quiet fight, this rebuilding." Months passed, the seasons shifted, and so did their rhythm. It wasn't just about learning to love each other anymore. It was about learning to live with one another, to coexist in a space where both voices mattered, where silence no longer meant distance but peace. Emily's consulting business flourished. She specialized in helping small businesses navigate complex transitions, a poetic echo of what she had done in her own marriage. Clients adored her for her calm authority, her laser focus, and her ability to turn chaos into clarity. What they didn't know was that behind that composed demeanor stood a man who had once almost lost her. A man who now attended every event she hosted, not because he had to, but because he wanted to see her shine. And shine she did. At a regional entrepreneur summit, she gave a keynote about negotiation dynamics. William sat in the front row, their son in his lap. While others listened for strategy, he heard something deeper: strength forged through pain, experience etched into every line she spoke. Love not mentioned by name, but present in every pause, every proud smile when she glanced his way. It was in that moment he realized she hadn't just taught him how to love, she had taught him how to live. And yet healing isn't linear. One evening, as they reviewed old storage boxes, Emily found her original marriage certificate. She stared at it for a long time, then said quietly, "This was a prison for me once." William reached for her hand. "And now it's a reminder," she replied, "of what we survived, of who we chose to become. Because that's the thing with wounds, they never quite disappear, but they can become stories, lessons, bridges, and if we're lucky, they can become reasons we know ourselves better." Their son grew. First words, first steps, nights of fevers, mornings of laughter. William changed in ways no one who knew him before would believe. He made space. He stepped back when she needed independence and stepped forward when she needed support. No longer the distant titan of business, he had learned how to be present, not just in meetings but in life. One evening, while tucking David into bed, the boy asked a question with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, did you always love Mommy?" William hesitated, then smiled. "I always could have, but I didn't know how, until she taught me." It was the truth, and children more than anyone deserve to grow up in the presence of truth. Outside their professional success and family joy, the couple also began mentoring others quietly, not with fanfare or media headlines. They supported struggling couples, taught communication workshops, and even funded scholarships for young women navigating arranged marriages across the globe. They didn't tell their full story, but through fragments, through the rawness of their experience, they created ripples in the lives of people they would never meet. There was a moment one quiet Saturday afternoon that brought it all full circle. They were cleaning out the guest room to turn it into a nursery for their second child. Yes, another miracle on the way, when Emily found the original merger agreement again. She held it for a moment, then tore it in half, not in anger, but in closure. "This doesn't define us anymore," she said. "No," William nodded, "but it reminds us how far we've come." She looked at him, really looked at him, and smiled. "You're not the man I married, and you're not the woman I remember from our wedding day," he replied. "But I love this version of us more," she whispered. And that's the secret no one tells you about love. The best relationships aren't about finding the perfect person. They're about growing into someone better together, through fire, through silence, through the long, uncomfortable journey of accountability and change. So what's the takeaway in all of this? It's this: love alone is not enough. You can feel something and still fail someone. You can have affection but lack presence. You can want someone and still treat them like a concept instead of a human being. Real love, the kind that transforms, that survives storms, that leaves legacies, isn't just emotion. It's effort, it's self-awareness, it's humility, it's admitting when you've been wrong, it's showing up even after you've failed. It's choosing someone not just once at the altar, but every day after, when it's hard, when you're tired, when it would be easier to walk away. And for those watching this story unfold and recognizing themselves in Emily, if you feel invisible, unheard, reduced to someone else's expectations, you have the right to demand more. Not with anger, not with ultimatums, but with the simple, radical act of believing in your own worth. Because the moment you remember who you are is the moment everything begins to change. And for the Williams out there, the ones who've buried their hearts under ambition, who've mistaken control for connection, who've loved in silence, know this: it's never too late to unlearn the wrong kind of love, to stop performing, to start listening, to rebuild not the image, but the bond. Because love isn't about the story others believe. It's about the truth you both live behind closed doors. So take a look at the person beside you. Ask yourself, do I see them? And more importantly, do I let them see me? Because in the end, the greatest romance isn't the one that starts with fireworks. It's the one that begins with finally saying, "I'm here, I see you, and I'm ready to begin again." Thanks for staying with us until the end. If this story moved you, made you think, consider sharing it with someone who might need it today. Subscribe our channel for more powerful stories about love, self-growth, and human connection, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next emotional journey.